87% of real estate agents don't make it past the first 5 years of real estate. But the interesting part is that content creation mirrors this stat almost exactly. 73% of creators quit within the first year of creating content. And it's not because it couldn't work for them, it's because they stopped before they were really able to see the payoff. Today, we're going to talk about something a lot of agents feel like they don't have, which is time. How much time do I actually have to spend to see social media work for me? And when am I going to see results? I get asked this more than almost anything else, and I want to get into it today because the answer is probably not what you're expecting. But before we get started, this episode is brought to you by Coffee and Contracts, the complete marketing system for real estate agents. Head to the show notes for a freebie and a special offer. And while you're doing that, be sure to hit subscribe or follow the podcast right now so you never miss an episode. I'm Alyssa Stalker. This is Above Asking. Let's get into it. If you're new here, welcome. This show is about content marketing and branding for real estate agents who want to think differently and build businesses they actually love. If you've been here before, welcome back. So I want to start by talking about a pattern that I noticed. And the first part of what I'm going to tell you I've known for a long time, but I actually connected it to something different this week that really changed how I'm approaching this conversation with agents. So a lot of us know that real estate has a very high failure rate as an industry, and so does content creation. So this is the unlock that I didn't realize but assumed probably had a connection, but 87% of real estate agents don't make it past the first 5 years of real estate. And even more recently, like nearly half of those who closed their first deal in 2022 couldn't close a single other deal in the following year. And I think we're continuing to see a lot of those numbers decline as the industry really thins out, coming through a down market and a lot of different changes. And also just competition feels harder and higher. And I don't say this to be negative. I think it's important that we recognize patterns, especially within our own business. Sometimes it's kind of like looking in a mirror so that you can really see what it is that you need to fix or what are you really building toward. A lot of times I talk to business owners or real estate agents and it's almost like they're kind of flying by the seat of their pants. And obviously, if you don't have a strategy, it's not going to get you very far. But the interesting part is that content creation mirrors this stat almost exactly. 73% of creators quit within the first year of creating content. And it's not because it couldn't work for them, it's because they stopped before they were really able to see the payoff. And that's something I see consistent across the board with most people. If it was easy, most people wouldn't do it and most people wouldn't succeed at it. And the thing is, a lot of people quit before they actually can see all of the reps that they put in work. It's like going to the gym. If you are going to the gym and you're very consistently going, let's say you're going a few days a week for 3 weeks. If you expect to have a 6-pack of abs in 3 weeks of going to the gym, number one, that's an unrealistic expectation, but you're setting yourself up for failure because when you hit that 3-week mark, you're like, I don't have a 6-pack of abs. And a lot of people quit at that point, but the people who keep going, they surpass where most people quit. And that's ultimately the difference of what you see when it comes to an agent who creates a sustainable business and passes that 5-year mark and somebody who doesn't, or somebody who even quits within the first year. A lot of agents don't make it out of their first year because the reality is it doesn't look the same for everyone. And I think social media blinds people a lot because you come onto social media, you see other agents, they look like they're having success with it. You get really excited by that and see this as a viable way to build your business. So you start creating content. But then what happens is you don't see that immediate payoff and you think, this isn't for me. It's just not my avenue. It's not going to work for me like it works for them. But the thing is, they continued creating past the point which most people stop. And so you're seeing the result of all of the reps that they put in for a very, very long time. And the reality is, a lot of people compare themselves like their day one to someone else's year three. And we've talked about that a lot on this show. And I think it always needs to be revisited, because oftentimes, especially in a social world where we're constantly scrolling our phones every day and looking at what everyone else is doing, it's easy to fall into that comparison trap. So as much as it is a tool, as much as it is a space to get inspiration, which there's nothing wrong with, by the way, looking and seeing what other people are doing and getting inspired by that, that's what trends are on social media. That's what people hop on, and it creates this snowball effect. So that's a beautiful thing, as long as you're taking it, making it your own, and really bringing your own personal brand to it, your own creativity, your own ideas. But where people get caught up is they're trying to compare apples to apples, when really the stages that they're at are still apples to oranges. So this is why I think the pattern exists. So I already made the correlation that both real estate and content creation as separate industries have a very similar pattern of fallout. And that's because people stop before they actually get to see what happens when all of those efforts compound over time. But I think the other thing that people do that really sets them up for failure when it comes to looking at this from a timeline standpoint is that they think that they're going to see results right away. But the reality is that I don't know of a single lead source in real estate that is going to give you an immediate payoff other than perhaps buying leads. But we're talking about organic efforts here. It takes a lot of reps of making phone calls to finally get someone who even picks up their phone, doesn't tell you to stop calling them, and then is willing to have a conversation with you, and then invite you over to their home to actually talk to them about selling it, and then actually hire you over anyone else that they possibly talk to. That's like 6 steps right there that someone has to jump through. And I don't know the exact average conversion percentage of cold calling, but I'm going to go ahead and guess that it's very low. And the difference between cold calling is that it's like a one-to-one effort. So every time you put in a rep, you're only reaching one person. Whereas social media, every time you put in a rep, it's limitless to how many people you could possibly reach. And imagine those compound efforts over time. One pretty much looks very linear, where social media continues to climb. Like if you looked at it on a graph, like you're doing cold calls, it's like effort in, effort out, right? But if you're doing social media, you're putting this effort in and growing at a very smooth trajectory, where eventually it kind of starts to work for itself. You start to have people in turn reaching out to you because you've created that visibility. And while we talk about your feed not being a billboard, it is pretty much like a storefront of your business that's always open. So at any time of the day, in the middle of the night, while you're out on the job, while you're sleeping, while you're picking up your kids from school, while you're on vacation, those efforts are compounding and working for you. And that's why we love social media. That's why I built my business that way. And I've talked about it before on the show. When I set out to grow my real estate business with the means of social media or digital marketing as a whole, because it wasn't just showing up on social media. At the time, we didn't have Reels, we didn't have ManyChat, we didn't have link in bio, we didn't have a process or ways to convert people from the app. So I had to kind of come up with this funnel myself. So when I say digital marketing, my whole goal was to create content, start conversations from that content, get those people to know me enough, or provide something like we would like a lead magnet today in our typical strategy, get their email, grow my email list, continue pouring into my emails. I spent so much time creating emails so that I could stay in front of people, even if I couldn't have one-to-one conversations with them in DMs, and so that I could invite them to events, so that I can meet them in real life and build those relationships. That's compounding over time. But I put in a lot of time because the only time I had was to do things digitally. I had to walk around with my kids in a stroller and make posts or talk on my phone to the camera and tell people what I was seeing out in my market, or what was going on this weekend, or when we started flipping properties, like going through what we were doing. And at the time, all I had was stories. So it really hasn't changed much other than it's gotten more advanced. I would say, if anything, agents agents have more tools. Agents have more insight into a real strategy. They have a blueprint that they can follow. So it does seem like it's noisier today because there's so many more people who are out there creating content. But really, to me, it's easier than ever to get started because you get that blueprint. There were people who walked with content so that you could run, literally. So I think one of the low-key wins when it comes to timing, like when you're going to see results, is number one, just keeping going and that consistency. I keep saying putting in those reps and comparing it to going to the gym, but that's really what it is. And it's not just about doing the exercise. What happens is when you continually show up, you learn a lot. You learn, oh, this works for me, this doesn't work for me. And you start to see different things happen that inform the next steps that you take. So if you don't show up in the first place, you're not gaining data, you're not learning anything about your process, and you don't have anything in which you can improve upon. So the people who kind of check in and check out of this process and they get inspired one day and say, okay, I'm going to post, I have an idea, and then they kind of go blank for a little bit, that is the biggest trap you can fall in about if you are concerned about time, because the time that you put into it now is going to increase your payoff later. It truly is a compounding effect. And I think that when it comes to looking at like how much time you actually need, I think that agents look at content creation as a lesser than business activity. And I think the question that you really have to ask yourself, and we talk about this all the time, is if you want it to be a lead source, you have to treat it like a lead source. So it deserves a real slot on your calendar. It deserves a non-negotiable time period of something that you are going to do on repeat every single week, every single day. And there's no way to sugarcoat it. Even when we give you the tools, the templates, like at Coffee and Contracts and all the things that save you time, we're still telling agents every week in coaching calls that it's not just about knowing what to post. You have to bring your own personality to it, your personal brand to it. You have to think about, how can I create a content filter for this that matches my ideal client? How do you create a content filter? I have to come up with footage of places that my ideal client would hang out at. I have to go take photos in my area. I have to go out and get listing content. I recently did a in-office brokerage training, and part of that is I talk to a few different agents in the office after I give, a training, a presentation, usually on various topics with social media. But when we dig into like their own personal strategy, because I always love to spend time doing actual examples, because I think it's really helpful for other agents to see it in practice. I can sit here with a slide deck and tell you all these tactical things and things that you should be aware of, things that you should be trying, things you should be doing. But it's really, really helpful when you can actually see like a real-time application. So we often have agents who get audits or they volunteer. But I love to ask people like, what do you think your biggest blocker is right now? What is preventing you from showing up in the way that you want to? Or what is your biggest pain point with social media? And most of the time, these rooms, and even in like our weekly coaching calls, they're filled with agents who want to do this. They're filled with agents who see this as something they see themselves doing. They just can't unlock why it's not working, or they haven't seen the success yet. So that is first and foremost the most important thing. You have to want to be doing this. You have to see the value in it, or you're probably never going to succeed with it. And you should probably find a different way to grow your business. Even though I do believe it is now like a standard in our industry to have a social media presence. I think it's what buyers and sellers are expecting of their agent today. That's kind of like a standard marketing practice for their property. But all that aside, if you don't see yourself as someone who's able to do this, as able to create content where you don't want to, you're probably never going to be successful with it. So that's number one. But number two, when I ask agents a lot of time, like, what is the problem? What is the blocker? What is your pain point? I hear a lot of it is time, like having time to go out and actually create content, or I don't know how to create good content. And there's a phrase that I love, and it's something is only difficult because you don't know how to do it yet. Difficult and hard are not the same thing. Difficult just means you haven't learned the skill yet, or you haven't put in the practice to get good at it. That doesn't mean it's hard. It's not hard to create content. It's not rocket science to figure out how to set up your phone so that you can get good content. These phones are so incredible today with the quality in which they can film. People film entire movies on iPhones. And the cool part about it is this is the type of content that people want to see in such a highly produced world. And we're filled with all of this AI content. People want raw humanness now. That's what's performing well on these platforms, but it has to be consumable. So it's not like you can just take your phone somewhere and just start panning and just start filming and upload a video that isn't consumable because the framing it's moving too fast. The framing's off. I can't see the details. I can't see the visuals that are stopping me in my tracks to say, oh, what is this? It's visually pleasing to the eye. I want to look at this. I want to consume this content. So I think that's the struggle that agents really have when it comes to content production, is that they feel like they don't know how to make quality. But there's so many resources out there. Like even if you just go on YouTube and look up what phone settings should I have? How can I film clips for Reels, for TikToks, whatever format you're using? There's so much content out there to teach you. And I know in Coffee and Contracts, we have an amazing Reels guide. Like Haley put together this incredible course. It is a bit lengthy, but you're going to walk away knowing everything you need to know to go out and self-film, to film a property in a way that visually is going to perform well on the platform, or you can get comfortable being behind camera and learn how to do talking heads. The thing is, you have to just prioritize it to set out first and learn it. The second thing is when agents say they don't have time to create content, oftentimes they're overcomplicating it or not really giving it a true place on their calendar. So to me, as a non-negotiable business activity, every week I'm setting aside an hour to do planning of my content. I'm going to look ahead and see what am I going to talk about this week. And there's different types of creators. Some people love to create on the fly when an idea sparks. Sometimes that's when their best content comes out. Sometimes it's their most low effort content that ends up performing the best. You know, the reel that you're like, oh, I spent 2 minutes, I didn't brush my hair, and I don't even look professional in my sweatpants, tends to perform way better than the thing that we sat down, we scripted, we got all ready, we tried to film it nicely, and we're like, oh my gosh, I put in all that effort and it flopped. That's also a whole other pattern of feeling discouraged in the process. But I think when you set aside time, at least for planning, and this is what I like to do, I like to look ahead, I like to plan, but then I like to leave white space for when the creativity pops up or when there's that raw moment, because I know that those perform well, and you just can't replicate that. You can't replicate something that's actually happening in the moment. So I'm a proponent of making a plan, keeping it loose, leaving white space, but being able to stick to it because you have a structure, because you have a plan. So that is going to help you with consistency. But when you have a plan, you know exactly what it is that you need to go out and capture or film. The other thing is when you're constantly doing this, you're building up a library in your camera roll. So oftentimes you're going to have clips that you can reuse. And yes, please reuse and repurpose your content. Our goal is to simplify this process, but still make quality content. It's not to always be doing more, always be tiring ourselves out, feeling like we always got to be filming. You should be building a library so that you kind of give yourself relief eventually. There again, that's another sign of compounding efforts. If you put in the effort up front, you build that library, you build that content, it's going to pay off later on because you have so much content that you can reuse or footage that you can repurpose, or you've taken so many branding photos out in your town and recognizable spots. You have a lot to work with no matter what type of content you are creating. But there's still always going to be a time where you need to get something fresh. You need to get something seasonal. An event's happening, a new place is opening in your area. You're going to have to get out in your community. But I think the beautiful part about that is that when you can get out in your community, you have the opportunity to take what you do online, offline. And I was saying this in the brokerage training that I did recently. And we talked about this a little bit on the Chelsea Pites episode. If you didn't catch that episode, go back and listen to it. She talks a lot about neuroscience, but also a lot of the hidden payoffs from social media that people don't think about because we're always looking at these vanity metrics of how many likes, how many followers, and even how many clients have I gotten directly from social media, like in the form of a DM. But what you don't realize is there's so many people in your community who are watching you, and the more that you get out in that community, people are going to recognize you. They're going to meet you in real life. Like, for example, when I would post about events coming up in town, or I would send a weekly event email, I would go to that event. Sometimes I would meet someone and they would recognize me and be like, oh, I'm here because I got your email, or I love your emails. Like, they always tell me what I'm going to do this weekend. And that's a hidden payoff. That's a byproduct of your efforts that you can't really ever quantify, because there's so many people now that are watching your content that maybe don't take action. Maybe they don't engage, but you showing up and that visibility in front of them is compounding over time, so that when they do see you in real life, or when the time comes that they're ready to buy or sell or transact, they remember you even if they didn't interact with you. So there again, that's why it is so important to put in the time, but get past that point, which most people stop, which is right before they see the payoff and all of those efforts that compounded, what the actual result is going to be. Okay, and this was something else I posted on Instagram this week. I made a reel about it. I am obsessed with the podcast Call Her Creator. Caitlin Rhodes is amazing. I love following her on social media. I love consuming her podcast. I feel like I'm just always tracking and aligned with whatever she's saying. But on a recent episode I was listening to, I was walking my dog and I literally stopped and hit replay on this concept. And the concept is the 1% rule. So if you were to improve 1% every single day, this isn't girl math, realtor math, this is actual math, you will be 37 times better at that activity within 1 year. So there again, those tiny little efforts don't just add up, they truly compound to a real result. And not only is doing content every single day going to make you 37% better at doing content because you have so much insight and so much data just from doing the effort, it's going to be something that starts to feel effortless. You're going to have a library of content that you can keep reusing. You're going to understand how your strategy is working, what really does work for you that you can double down on. And then you're going to see those results, whether they're online or in real life. And I think that's the beauty of social media. Sometimes it's the catalyst that brings you a real relationship offline. It just was cultivated and started online. And that's really what made me fall in love with it as a business activity. It wasn't even so much about loving to create content. I don't think the term content creator even existed yet when I first started, but I thought this app was just such a great way to bring people together. And like I said, I did what I had to do at the time and what I thought worked for me because I was a new mom. I couldn't just go out or spend hours on the phone or knocking on doors. I just simply didn't, that wasn't accessible to me. But more than anything, it didn't feel natural to me. What does feel natural to me is having conversations, making friends. And I'm somebody who isn't a big fan of small talk or beating around the bush in a room. I am really about authenticity, and the best conversations I have are when we can just get into something, we have something to talk about. And sometimes in large crowds or big rooms, that's something I personally struggle with. In a networking room, sometimes I don't know how to go ahead and insert myself in a conversation. So for me, that was very awkward to try to just cold outreach to people. But what's cool, and especially if I post personal content, not just business content, but if I posted content about, oh, this is a new park that opened up, my kids are loving it, I love coming here, that would spark a conversation with someone that would build a genuine relationship. Oh, we love that park too. Oh, where is that? I want to go check it out. And then just from that spark, that question, we keep talking, we keep commenting on each other's stories, and that relationship compounds over time. So if you take anything away from this episode, think of the word compound, in literally everything you do, in time, in effort, in results, all of it compounds and it all works together. So when I talk about it being a business activity and how much time you should really be spending per week, because I know We get more into thought in this podcast than we do on the specifics of being tactical, not because the tactics don't matter, but I think what's more important is getting people thinking so that they can understand how things apply to their own business. And that's really why I say, like, this podcast is about thinking differently, not so much telling you what to do, because I think a lot of people are shouting at us what to do, but we're not sure how to apply it to us. So that's why we really unpack a lot of these conversations. And my goal with the show is that I hope you see yourself in them. I hope you see your business in them. And so that you can take these thoughts, let it marinate, think on them, and feel like you're coming up with a plan or an action step or a strategy or something that truly works for you. But I will get tactical because I know you're wondering and I know you're going to ask. But in general, and I have some stats right here, small business owners are recommended to spend 20 to 30% of their working hours on marketing. That is roughly one full day a week. Most agents aren't even close to that, and they confuse prospecting with marketing, or is going out and doing an open house, is that considered marketing? Whatever it is, whatever your main bucket is that you're pouring into should be where you're spending the bulk of your time. But I want to give you a realistic breakdown. And I wrote this down because I didn't want to forget it. And I really thought about this. And I thought about agents who are in different stages of their careers are going to have more or less time in different stages, as far as, like, if you are a brand new agent, you probably have a lot of time unless you have a second job or something like that. If you are a working busy agent, you're going to have to reprioritize your marketing. You might have to delegate some things. You might have to think about how you're prioritizing your schedule, but also because you've compounded a lot of these efforts over time, if you're doing high leverage activities like social media, that pipeline is kind of built for you and it kind of just continues to grow on its own. So you need less time in that sense, if that makes sense. So on average, I'm going to say across the board, 1 hour a week planning, which is kind of like understanding what you're posting, what the goal is, what's coming up in your market or life that's worth talking about, and then about an hour shooting. So that's between showing up, and this is like across the week, like showing up on your stories, getting by the camera, doing talking heads, and capturing content everywhere you already are. And that doesn't really take up extra time if you just start getting used to kind of following everything you're doing in your day, capturing it. Even if it's not you talking about your day, just clips of your day, getting in your car, grabbing your cup of coffee, taking a drink of the coffee, putting your chapstick on in the mirror. All of that is B-roll and clips that are very valuable, especially as like filler in different types of reels and a lot of content. And it's highly reusable because it's not specific. The time that you should put into capturing content that's not a part of your everyday is specific. Like, what location am I going to? What business am I featuring? Things like that, listings, stuff like that. And then usually I think it takes about 1 to 2 hours of editing, for me anyway. And there again, if you're brand new, it might take you longer. If you've never edited anything before in your life, you're going to have to learn that skill. You're going to have to learn how to use Instagram edits or CapCut. There again, get yourself into a training, kind of self-assess where you are. There are so many tools. There's so much available to you. YouTube is the school of life, as I refer to it. You can literally learn how to do anything on YouTube. You just have to empower yourself enough to go out and try to learn it. So that's one thing I recommend. So eventually that'll compound over time. You're learning your effort, putting in those reps, and you'll be able to get faster at editing. And then this is like a huge non-negotiable, I think, for everybody. I don't care what stage you're at in your business. Everybody needs to spend the same amount of time every single day, 30 minutes posting and engaging. Talking to people that already follow you, talking to people that don't follow you, actually starting conversations in your DM. That is the number one activity I think people sleep on that actually has the highest payoff, even higher over than posting the content itself. It's actually talking to people, because that is the whole entire point. It's not to see ourselves on film. It's not to stand on our soapbox and give a talking head about the market. It's not just to sell the listings or the inventory that we have. It's truly building relationships, and you just can't do that unless you actually start talking to people. So that's roughly 3.5 to 4 hours a week total. And I feel like To be clear, that is for somebody who already has their content ideas together. They're either good at graphics or they're using templates that they are customizing. They already understand their strategy. That's kind of like your baseline. This is the work I'm putting in every single week when you have all of those things lined up. If you're building from scratch, if you're ideating, you're designing, you're writing captions from scratch, hopefully you're not using AI to completely do that for you. That is going to take you a lot longer, but that is why things like coffee and contracts exist. So you have all the tools, you have all of the knowledge. You need to just set out and commit to actually learning it, to actually doing it and putting in those reps so that if you do it every single day, you will be 37% better by the end of the year. You will see everything compound over time. And the number one thing is to remember, just don't quit before you see the payoff because it will come. You just have to keep going. So when agents ask me, how much time is this going to take? My honest answer is less than you think and longer than you want. The time part is actually the easy thing to figure out once you stop treating it like something you do when you have a free moment and start treating it like the lead source that you want it to be. So if something landed for you today, be sure to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode drop. And until next week, stay above asking.